So in this video, what I'm going to cover off is some basics around securing and managing securities in a SharePoint team site. So here we are at our SharePoint team site, but what I'm just going to do to give you a quick overview is let's have a look at the permissions. So by default, what you normally get when you set up a team site is you get three groups, security groups, and they're called members, owners, and visitors. So visitors are read, members are edit, which is read-write, and owners have full control. Now if we go into, for example, members, click on that, we can see which individual users are members of this group. You can see that this is an individual user, so to create a new user I can simply go new, and I can add an existing user into here to give them access. Now what I can also do, if you notice up the top there, is that I can, for example, create a group. So I can create a new group here, so a new security group, and assign users into that as required. So this is basically a SharePoint group which is unique to SharePoint, cannot generally be utilized elsewhere within Office 365. Now when I create a new group, you'll notice that I have to select from the permissions. So at the moment this is the full range of permissions that I do have available. So I can go from full control down to design, down to edit, contribute, read, view only. So what in this case I'm going to set it to design and go create. So this will create a new group which will appear in our list of security groups for our team site. So if we go down here, you'll see basically that we have a group here called new group. There it is there. And if I click on it, you'll see that I can add individual users into it. So what I'll do, I'll actually just take myself out of that group because I have rights elsewhere. So that's how simple it is to add and remove users. So again, what I'm looking here is when I click on groups, I'm getting the groups from the complete site collection, and we'll get in there and we'll show you how the groups work from within the team site shortly. So with those securities in mind, let us dive into and show you how you can set up these permissions quickly and easily. So if I want to share a complete site with a group of users, what I do here is simply click the share button and I will now see a shared dialog. So again, what I've got here is I can simply type the user's name, and if it's an Office 365 user, you will see that name appear, and then I can simply go to share. Notice down the bottom here I've got the option to send or not send an email invite, and by default look at the group that it's added to. So it's added to the tutorial members group, which has edit rights. If I pull that down, I can obviously change that. You'll see in here, here's the new group that I created. So I will add this new user to this new SharePoint group which I just created, and that will give them access. Now when I do that, up in the top right you'll see that I get notification that it has been shared with a user, and if I elected, that user will receive an email notifying them and giving them a link to that SharePoint site. So really that's how easy it is to share. Now if I go back into the share again and have a look, what it will now show me is up the top here you'll see that it says it is shared with this individual user. If I click on the shared with, you'll see a group of users that is currently shared with. So this is myself, Lewis Collins, who I'm logged in as, and I've just shared it with Robert Crane here. Now I can choose to email everybody, and if I want I can go into the advanced options within SharePoint to get more details. Now when I do that, if I click on the advanced option here, you'll see this takes me to the traditional way of configuring SharePoint permissions, which is what we noted before at the beginning of the video. So again, this should be very familiar to you in the beginning of the video. But what I will do is I will move back to the team site and I'll show you how to get to that area as well. So most of the configuring permissions requires you to be an owner or to have full access to the site. When you do have that, you can then set permissions for your site library. Now when we've got our site library displayed, we can go to the cog in the top right, and that will display a menu. From that menu we select site settings. So that site settings will take us into some configuration options for our team site and allow us to make any changes. Now in the top left-hand corner, you'll see under users and permission, I have people and groups, site permissions, and site app permissions. So if I select site permissions, this will take us into the area which we have now seen a number of times. So this is the new group that I created and the 3 existing groups that were there before. So as mentioned before, what I can do is simply select the group to drill into the information about who is in there, who has access to it, and so at the moment only Robert Crane. So to add a new user in here, I can simply click on this and add myself in as a user, and you'll see as an Office 365 user that will appear, and I will simply share that. So now I will appear in that group. I will assume all the rights of that group, and that will also allow me to get access to whatever I need. Now remember that the way that this works is that if you're assigned to a group with lower rights and you are in a group with higher rights, the higher rights always take precedence. So I remember that the rights are hierarchical. Okay, so that is the permissions for the whole site. Now, important to remember that the idea with a SharePoint site is that the rights flow down the tree. So we've now set the rights for our entire site by default. Now, what we can do is we can go into an individual element within SharePoint. So I'm going to go into my document library, and what I can elect to do here is I can configure the rights just for this document library to be different from the rest of my site. So to do that, I select the Library tab. The ribbon menu will be displayed. From there, what I will select on the right-hand side is a button here called Library Settings. So if I select that, that will take me into the configuration options for this document library. Now, one of the options you will see here in the middle column under Permissions and Management is permissions for this document library. So if I select that, that will take me into the ability to configure permissions for this library. Now, the first thing to notice is that by default that the rights are inherited. So this means that the rights at the site, team site level, flow down automatically into the document library by default. So I can't change anything because the rights are controlled one level above. But in the top left here, I can select the button to stop inheriting the rights. So this will now break that inheritance and stop them flowing down the tree. I need to confirm that by hitting OK. You'll now see once that completes that I can go in and start working with individual security. So here you'll see that what I can do now is I can go in and select these individual items. So I can go in now and I can remove the permissions for this group. So what that will mean is I'll remove anybody who is a member of this new group out of rights to this document library. So I can then, for example, go in and maybe select members, and what I can then do is check to see who's in there. That group obviously flows through as it did before. But what I can do now is, because I've broken the inheritance, I can make this group have more or less rights than it would normally in the team site. So I can simply select that and then go into Edit User Permissions. So that will now allow me to control the permissions for this entire group. So again, I want to uncheck Edit and check Design. So I've now upgraded the rights for that group of users just for this document library. So now they can do more in this document library than they could with anywhere else in the team site. Now I can go in and add individual rights to this location and check permissions and do things like that. But if I decide that I no longer want to have unique permissions for this document library, I simply select the button in the top left here to delete those unique permissions. It will then let me know that that will be lost, so any changes or customizations I've made will be lost. I go OK, and that will now re-inherit the rights and basically copy those from the team site back down. So again, what I need to do if I want to make unique rights is stop inheriting. If I need to undo that and allow them to again flow down, I then select the option to go back to them. Now we have the option here to not only set rights at a team site level, which is the first thing we did with the share command. The second option that we've covered is setting rights for an individual item, so within a document library, for example, so that controls all the securities within the document library. But what I can also do is I can actually assign securities down to individual items in this library. So what I'm going to do is select upload. I'm going to go in here and just upload a single document. So let's pick this one here. We'll upload that into our document library. Give it a second to upload. And as we normally see, here is our document. Now if I select this to work on it and then select manage from the menu bar across the top, one of the options that I will have here, you'll see that I have again the option to share with. So if I select that, this will bring me up to my familiar dialog. So now I can, as I did before, invite individual people by simply putting in their email address, and then you'll note that I can select whether they can edit or whether they can view. So when we share individual files, we have more flexibility in the rights that we can give people. But once again, I can set them to require login, and then down the bottom here I have the option to again send them an email invite. Now the difference here is when I share an individual file, I get an additional option. So what I can do is I can go in here and I can create a link to this file. So this basically allows direct anonymous access to this file. So this would allow someone to simply click on this link if it was sent in an email, and it would display that file in a browser window. So in this case, they can only view the file. If I create an edit link, they can go in and actually edit that file. So it's really great if you want somebody to work on a spreadsheet or a document without having the need to log in. If I go to the last option, as before, you'll see I have the users that the document is shared with by default. So remember, that is inheriting the rights from the team site, and the team site is sharing it with these two people. Again, I've got the option to go into the advanced area. When I go into the advanced area, you'll find that it is very similar to what you have seen before. So this will allow me again to go in and make any changes. Now remember that this is an individual document within a document library, and again this is it has unique permissions here because we've set up individual sharing. If I want, I can go in here and I can delete the unique permissions, and I can revert it back to those of the document library. So remember, quite quick and easy to do that. So you can create individual rights by breaking the inheritance, and then you can reinstate those rights if required. You can drill down and you can create individual rights all the way down to single documents. So what I'm going to do here is again stop the inheritance, make it unique for this file. Now when I do that, you'll see here that again I can go in and add individual rights. I can also check the permissions for the groups. So again, nice and easy to do that. So if I wanted to go in and grant permissions to an individual user, I just go in here and again type their name as you've seen before, and again require sign in. Now down the bottom here I can choose what level of permissions they get. So I have everything from full control all the way through to design, as which I had before. So what I'm going to do is simply leave that as approve, uncheck the send an email option, and go share. So now we'll see an individual user has been given rights to this document in this particular area. So this is never generally good practice because it becomes very hard to manage and maintain. So basically, in summary, what we've covered is that when you go into your team site, generally by default there are three groups that are security groups that are created for you. These are called visitors, members and owners. Visitors have read-only, members have read-write, and owners have full control. You can get to this either by using the share button, or if you want to go directly, you go to the cog and then select site settings. Now remember, these options are only available to you if you are an owner or an administrator of the site. Once we're in site settings, we can select, for example, people in groups or site permissions. So we can now go in and look at the permissions for this complete team site. We can make any adjustments, we can add new users, we can create new groups and put users in the groups. Now once we've done that, remember that by default the rights that we set for our team site will flow down through all the elements within our site by default. So if we change the rights for our team site at the top level, then for example our document library will also inherit those rights. Now to change that, you go into the individual element, you then select for example the library tab, and what you will find then is the ability to change the library settings. So if we select library, so we're in the document library, we then go to library settings, which will be over here on the right, and one of the options here is basically to then configure the permissions for the document library. So when you do go into the permissions, you'll see that they look very similar. It's just a matter of adding users and removing users. And the other thing to keep in mind in the top left hand corner here is the item, whether they're inheriting or not inheriting. So again, quick and easy to change within SharePoint. So in summary, you can provide and manage permissions in a SharePoint team site from the top level of the whole site all the way down to individual items within SharePoint if you so choose to. So again, thank you very much for watching this video.